Most people have never heard of the Strait of Hormuz. Yet this narrow stretch of water may be one of the most important places on Earth. Because every single day, massive oil tankers carrying energy from the Middle East pass through this tiny corridor. And together, those ships transport nearly 1/5 of the world's oil supply, which means something remarkable. If this single waterway were ever blocked, the global economy could feel the shock almost immediately. The Strait of Hormuz sits between Iran and Oman, connecting the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. At its narrowest point, the entire passage is only about 33 kilometers wide. But the shipping lanes used by oil tankers are even narrower. In some places, ships travel through corridors only a few kilometers across. Yet through this narrow gateway flows an enormous amount of the world's energy. Oil remains one of the most important resources in the global economy. It fuels transportation, powers industries, and supports modern infrastructure. Even today, millions of barrels move across the world every day to meet global demand. And a significant portion of that oil begins its journey in the Persian Gulf. But because of geography, nearly all of it must pass through the same choke point, the Strait of Hormuz. Every day, enormous oil tankers line up to move through the strait. Some of these vessels carry millions of barrels of crude oil in a single trip. In total, roughly 20% of global oil consumption passes through this narrow waterway. That means the economies of countries thousands of kilometers away, from Europe to Asia, depend on this single route remaining open. The importance of the Strait of Hormuz is not just economic, it is also deeply geopolitical. Because the waterway lies directly beside Iran, one of the region's most powerful countries. Over the years, tensions between Iran and Western powers have repeatedly raised fears that the strait could become a flashpoint. At times, military forces from several countries patrol the region to ensure the route remains open. Countries around the world depend on stable energy supplies. Major economies like China, Japan, South Korea, and India import enormous quantities of oil from the Persian Gulf. For many of these countries, shipments passing through the Strait of Hormuz are a critical part of their energy security. If the route were suddenly closed, alternative shipping paths would be far longer and far more expensive. Some countries have built pipelines designed to bypass the strait. These pipelines allow oil to reach the open ocean without traveling through Hormuz. But the capacity of these alternatives is limited. Even if every alternative route were used at full capacity, they could only replace a portion of the oil currently moving through the strait, which means the world still depends heavily on this narrow corridor. Most people will never see the Strait of Hormuz. But every time oil prices shift, every time global markets react to tensions in the Middle East, this narrow waterway is often somewhere in the story. A reminder that in global geopolitics, even the smallest places can carry enormous power. And today, as tensions rise between Iran, Israel, and the United States, the Strait of Hormuz once again reminds the world how fragile the global energy system really is.